Chinese-American actors Byron Mann and Ma were both born in Hong Kong and are now Hollywood actors co-starring in AMC's hit American television series Hell on Wheels, a contemporary Western. Byron Mann plays the role of Chang, a powerful businessman and the villain of the series. Mann has starred in such films as Red Corner and The Corruptor and the Asian-American indie film Jasmine. He's recently been cast in The Big Short to play opposite a couple people we may have heard of: Brad Pitt, Christian Bale, Steve Carell, Ryan Gosling. Now, Ma is a veteran actor and has played in a wide variety of roles in everything from movies such as Rush Hour and $1 Million Arm to television hits like 24. Live Another Day. He's joining us to talk about his Hell on Wheels character, Tao, a highly educated Chinese man whose good English makes him invaluable to the railroad company. Hell on Wheels is dedicating its 5th and final season to telling the story of the significant Chinese contribution made to building America's transcontinental railroad during the 1860s, and is doing so for the first time in television history.
我哋點樣還債啊，鄭生？我哋成班人都還唔到債。鄭老闆，你話啦，我哋點樣還債先？嚇？我哋等後再講。Boss man.
Mr. Bohannon, an honor to finally serve you in my humble rice shop. What can I get for you? Something to eat? Tea?
Just them workers right there.
Oh, in China, it's an offense to refuse a host's offer of food or drink. But this isn't China, thank God.
Gentlemen, welcome to Full Frame.
Great to be here.
Good to be here.
Well, Ty, let me start with you. I mean, you've had so many roles, and a lot of them fantastic. I mean, you've been great on screen.
Thank you.
You get this offer. This is special, though, isn't it? Why so, would you say?
Well, I think this is history in the making, because Hell on Wheels is a show about building of the railroad. And the Chinese had a significant contribution to building the railroad. And the fact that they built the most difficult part of the railroad, and this story has never been told, ever, really. I think it's about time that the American audience and hopefully the worldwide audience get to see the contribution of the Chinese, who basically had a hand in making America what it is today.
You know, what's interesting is when I talk about CCTV-America and I explain it, I always say it's a bridge between cultures in many ways. And it's a story, it's the American story for the Chinese story for the Americans in the West, and obviously a much bigger, we're a global network. But I think about that bridge from East to West and that story. I mean, clearly, without this railroad and the difficulty and the complexity of it, as you said, America isn't what it is. I mean, the American story wouldn't be that story, would it?
Absolutely. And I think even if you look at the global economy today, no one is isolated. Everyone is related. Everyone is interlocked, and there's a network of it. So whatever happens across the other side of the world will affect what's happening here, and vice versa. So I think it's really important to really build understanding, to build, bridges that we all can get a better communication network among the world people. I think it's important.
Speaking of building bridges, this is remarkable. We have the two of you sitting on the sofa. You're not going for each other's throats, because in the show, you're not the best of friends. Byron, you're just this fantastic guy, but you're kind of like the villain in this show. Not a nice guy. What attracted you to this role, would you say?
Well, the role of Chang was written really with a lot of dimensions. He's a character who's from China, from the Civil War, the Taiping Rebellion, and he comes over to America to reinvent himself. And I mean, this is a guy who speaks, Chinese, English. He reads Shakespeare. All these things. And it's a very multi-dimensional character that when I read the script, I said, wow, I've never seen this character before.
So tell us about your character, Tao. What did you like about that character?
Tao, I tell you, Tao is as complex a character as Chang is. And I think his journey is fascinating. I think he began as a simple man, became very complex because of special circumstances he's thrust upon on him because of the fact that he was bilingual. So he had an opportunity to kind of grow. And I think he kind of went full circle and got to be very simple again, so that his principle is driven by a singular focus as opposed to all of these different things that thrusts him into a situation where it may be difficult for him.
Let's watch a clip with you kind of at the center of it. Let's talk a little bit about it. So let's watch a clip. This is Tao in action.
He steals my money, I'll make more. If he beats me, I stand up. If he beats me again, I stand up again.
And white man wants to try to hang Chang? The coach never made to Cisco. He's capable.
He could not win in China. He will not win here. I'm not afraid of Chang.
Yeah, maybe you ought to be.
What I love about that scene, and you don't see this enough, I think, in television shows, is they really gave you the freedom to do a lot with your face without words and convey so much. I mean, there's so much there. It's rich.
Well, the beauty of that particular clip is that he's gotten back to the simple part. Because I think he came to America fearing Chang, because he knows who this guy is, how powerful this guy is, and how dangerous this guy is. And I think after he got beaten up in the show, I think he grew. I think he understands that in order to get to where he needs to go, he needs to bring everything back to the original form, which is simplicity. And I think that's what happened in this scene.
Well, I've played a clip of you. Now let's go to you. I want to show you Byron in action. It kind of shows you the different characters that we're talking about here.
You reconsidered my offer.
No. Come to see you distribute the Chinese payroll square.
Payroll distribution has continued without incident.
You're skimming wages. That stops now.
This is very unusual. A white man coming into my establishment to lecture me on how I conduct my business.
Railroad's my business, Mr. Chang, and all the workers own it.
Well, the Chinese workers are contracted through my company, Mr. Bohannon, for a negotiated price. How we then compensate those workers is Chinese business.
It's Chinese business. So is he looking after him? Is he trying to just skim the money? Is he hurting him, helping him?
Well, look, the character of Chang, I mean, here's what happened. You know, the Irish workers were making $3 a day. The Chinese workers were making $1 a day. And of that $1, I would take 50%. Now, why? Now, is that a bad guy? Well, okay, Chang has to provide for the restaurants, the opium houses, the whorehouses, to make, you know, to keep the workers happy. So he needs that money to finance all these things. So that's, you know, he's a businessman, right? These things don't grow on trees, right? So he's not a bad guy, in my opinion. He's just a businessman.
Were you surprised that they would dedicate a whole season to this? As you said, it's the untold story, a really important story about American history. And I think in many respects, if you were to pick up a history book, it might be a chapter or a page, and then you're on with it, and yet a vital story. Were you surprised?
Well, what was interesting that I found out from the producers was that, you know, out of all the 15,000 Chinese workers that worked on the railroad, and there were two lines, Central Pacific Railroad from the west to the east, San Francisco out toward the east. There was Union Pacific from the east to the west, and it was a race for time because every track, every mile they covered, 20 miles either way, the railroad owners would own that land and all the land rights to that land. So as you can imagine, it was a race. So the producers told me that of all the 15,000 Chinese workers that worked on the railroad, there were only a written record of 3 people. So that's why, you know, these stories were not documented, how they survived, you know, what happened. It was all verbal. I have friends whose grandparents, great-grandparents worked on the railroad, and they would tell me stories and tell the producer stories of what happened. But all these were, you know, transferred down verbally, not written.
And it could be lost without somebody stepping up and tying it all together and stitching it together in this way.
Exactly. So I found it very, you know, interesting. You know, my great-grandfather is from this province called Guangzhou, and within the province, Taishan. You know, I'm from Taishan. I believe Tai is also Taishan, from Taishan. So it's very serendipitous that both of us are working on the story, portraying these characters from the village of Taishan.
And so in many respects, this role probably far more important than any other in that you carry that burden of trying to tell this story of your ancestors in a way.
Yes, I think it was a surprise that they devote the entire season to tell our story. That never happens. I mean, most of the time when you tell this kind of story in the context of the Wild West, we're background color, okay, we're just atmosphere. So now you're talking about both of us are center stage. We're the focal point of the entire season. It's unheard of. So really, we're grateful that the fact that we get the opportunity not only for the world to share the story, but for us as people from Toisan get to tell our forefathers' story, and it is that important. It is beyond important. I mean, the weight in a lot of respects is overwhelming. But I think Byron and I both accept that responsibility because we feel that we represent our community well.
You know, preparing for this, one of the things that popped into my head was the movie Hollywood Shuffle. I don't know if you guys saw that years ago, but there's that famous scene where this guy's a Shakespearean actor and he goes in and delivers these lines, and then the other guy comes in and is doing this whole thing, and the first one's like, you're not really black, you're black, and it's these three white people making these decisions, and I think, you know, as a Chinese American trying to get roles, I mean, how hard is it to get something meaty and important like this, and how much of a struggle is that?
You know, really, as actors, there's not that much control you can have over these things, you know, right? I mean, you just kind of be open and things would happen. But I would say that what's really interesting, and you may agree, in the last 5 years, with the emergence of the China market in the film business, that a lot of film projects and television projects, they're mindful of casting Chinese actors so that their projects, especially big studio movies, can translate, can be shown in the mainland Chinese market. That I found very interesting.
And Tai, you've probably been around the block maybe once or twice more than this guy. So you've watched this whole trajectory. How has it changed in your career?
I think, as Byron says, in the last 5 years, and as I said before, whatever happens in the East affects the West. What happens from the West affects the East. And I think there is truth to that. I think, you know, there is a marked improvement in terms of, and I think there are several reasons for that. The accuracy of telling these stories and making these characters multidimensional and full-fledged out of characters that you see. And that's from one, technology. I think research is easier, that you have access to all of these wonderful information that can give you the confidence to write a good character. And secondly is that I don't think you can get away with it these days, that you write something that doesn't ring true. So I think you'll kind of have your back against the wall, that you really need to tell the story the proper way or don't tell it at all.
You're both artists. You obviously care deeply about your craft, and that's, you know, the performance. But also when you work on a project, especially this one this close to your heart, you want there to be a takeaway. You know, you're on one side of the television screen, the viewer's on the other. So, and I want to ask both of you this question. What do you want somebody watching this series, the ultimate takeaway? A respect and admiration, perhaps a deeper knowledge of the sacrifices? I mean, what's, for you personally, what does it mean on the other side?
You know, I think for me, it's actually, I didn't think too much about, you know, carrying the burden of the Chinese race when I was doing this project. I was just thinking about carrying my weight, you know, making sure I don't embarrass myself, you know, because I had to do a lot of stuff in this show. I had to quote Shakespeare. I had to do, you know, act like a guy from that period. I had to fight, you know, all these things. So I think the takeaway for me is that, number one, they would understand the Chinese side of the story, all right? And number two, what a great drama. What a great story. That's it. If the audience can get both of these things, then I'm fairly happy.
Ty?
I think when you tell any story, you want the audience to be moved one way or the other. And I think we have accomplished that because as this character goes through the show as Tao, I mean, he dies in the show. He gets killed. And Twitter just lit up. I mean, fan reaction that night was unbelievable. That my phone just never stopped about vibrating from 6 o'clock on, because in the East Coast, the show was already on. So by 6:30, people were already sensing that something's wrong. Something's gonna go awry. And some of the feeds were going, oh no, this can't happen. Oh, you know, it's like, it's amazing. It's emphatic. So you know that somehow the show, what we did as actors, as contributors, as collaborators of this creative process, have hit a core. Audiences feel what we do.
Right.
And I think ultimately, you know, as actors, that's what we want. We want you to feel. So hopefully, from this, you know, we get something a little more out of life than what we see every day. So
My phone was vibrating too, actually, except, you know, it was all hate mail. You know, I hate
We
you.
had to carry that burden at least, right?
Right. They're all blaming me, right? As if I did it.
What I liked is your candor, your honesty about, you know, I'm worrying about myself. I'm not the entire, because I remember seeing Dustin Hoffman in an interview, and he said, you know, any actor who's honest, they'll tell you they get the script, and I'm not on page 12, I'm not on page, you go to page 62, oh, this looks good. You know, they're more concerned about their part, but the overall seeing it all come together, though, that's the other thing about acting in a film or in a TV show. You're shooting kind of out of order and all over the place, but to actually watch the thing on screen once it's done, that's got to be special too.
Oh, yes. I remember the first day of filming for me, I had to, you know, first of all, portray my character, speak and talk the way I am and move the way I am. And I also had to play poker with Anson Mount and another actor, Jim, who plays Jim Strobridge. I've never played poker before in my life. So that was my first day. And I had to quote Shakespeare on the first day. So, you know, I didn't know that, you know, if you play poker, you have to put down chips first, and then you pick a card, and then you lay down a card. There's like 3 things going on, right? So I was worried about my lines, obviously. So I would sometimes just, you know, put down money first, and then take a card without putting back. And, you know, the guy off screen was giving me hand signals as to, like, this is a card, this is, you know, for you to put down the money, you know. So, yeah, we just worried about myself.
Ty, I would agree that both of us learned something very valuable. We should play poker with him, because
Yes,
I have played
absolutely.
before, and he's a sucker. He's
I'm telling you, let's play right now. Come on, Byron. I hope you brought money.
Well, if I lose, bad things might happen to you.
Oh, no, I'm more.
Oh, wait a minute. We want to separate the two of you. We've gone back into character.
Right.
Thank you both for stopping by. It's been a delight. Great fun. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.